Hey everyone, and welcome to the Doge That Reads. Dungeons & Dragons, or any other tabletop RPG for that matter, can be great when the GM and players are all on the same page, and want nothing more than to enjoy building a world and story with each other. Though sometimes, there can be that one player that can make decisions that just make the whole experience cringy and less than fun, much like the examples in these next D&D horror stories. But first, you may have seen her debut in one of the previous videos, but it's time to formally present Alice the cat, and she has something to ask. She's such a sweet kitten. Kinda had to adopt her since she just walked right into our house one night. But anyway, let's hop right into these tales of tabletop RPG cringe. Main character somehow knows everything, by Reddit user Jensen's Gamma. Recently started a new campaign where my character is trained in a very ancient lost martial art that they learned in a far distant monastery. So it is very surprising when main character also knows this martial art. The DM assured me that he was just a novice, whereas the monk was a master, but still let me have agency over my backstory. Unfortunately, the party has a main character who enjoys having his finger in every pie. After an encounter where my cool martial art style was finally on display and my character asked the party to keep quiet about it as some bad guys want to kill the remaining practitioners, the main character goes, "Oh, cool, I could do that too." And according to the DM, he's not wrong. On the surface, this can be seen as a way to build party cohesion, but I feel now as if my backstory is pretty invalid. My guy being on the run, having a cool secret to keep. Nope, apparently it's all common and open in the next country over, and this other party member can do what I can do. Somehow, one character is knowledgeable and a part of everyone else's backstory. Barbarian goes on an animus spirit quest? Oh, cool. So did main character. Got into an exclusive college? Rad. He attended for a few semesters too. Are you an older, well-traveled wizard? Somehow, he is even older and knows more. It's so obnoxious, and I wish the DM would put some boundaries around this, as no other party member feels unique or particularly gifted in any respect. Update. Had a Discord call with DM, main character, and 2 of the remaining 4 of us. As some of you suspected, the DM read all of our backstories, got excited, and shared them with main character before session 0. Main character loved our backstories so much that he wanted to incorporate them into his. So he scrapped his entire character idea and wrote an extremely long backstory about, yes, his character is some sort of chosen one who wants to learn from every party member, to combine into one singular mega character. This didn't go over very well with the players in attendance, as our backstories are personal. The wizard wants to learn this language to cast some mythical spell that can restore a loved one he lost. So to have some new guy you've never met before butt in on that is pretty strange. According to DM, he wrote extensively about how his character went to each of our backstories and interacted with them, which is pretty lame. He was a student before my guy at the monastery apparently, even though bits in my backstory make that very unlikely. He discovered the legendary text before a wizard did, but never felt the need to go searching for more until a wizard brought it up. He also spoke to the same animus deity that Barb did, even though that was somehow ruled out in Barb's background. The players in attendance voiced our grievances, and the DM was shocked that we didn't like their idea. Which is weird, because I wrote my character for me, not to contribute to some other person's character. But yeah, somehow they didn't foresee this being an issue. The DM and main character kept reiterating that they thought we would be flattered that he wanted to learn your playstyles and secrets. Which is weird. They got really stuck on that. They thought it'd instantly bond us and make us super best friends immediately. But as I said, Pretty much everyone's backstory was personal. Like the barbarian's vision quest was explicitly about and for him, so it's a weird thing to have to share with someone else. At the end of the call, they wanted to compromise and have it so that main character couldn't do what we could all do individually, but that they wanted his character to then become a student and learn from everyone else's character, which I don't know how I feel about. I kind of don't want to teach him my thing, and why would the barbarian and wizard want to share their personal tragedy with some new guy? DM and main character thought this was a good compromise, while the others in the call got quiet and gave non-committal answers. The call ended awkwardly, and I guess we'll see what happens. The next session is Wednesday night, so I'm gonna chat with the other players before then. Yeah, that is kinda messed up to show one player everyone's backstory before the game even starts. Not only for what happened in this case, but it kinda takes each player's character's mysteries away, and how they'll come to be traveling together, and how each has a goal that interlinks into a story. But then the whole idea of one character being able to do everything that all the other characters can do, it kinda sounds like a mid-90s cartoon show.
The main character.
I mean, I don't even know how that would work functionally. Would he have multiple character sheets that he could switch between like Shang Tsung in Mortal Kombat? And in what mind did the DM and him think that the other players would be down with this? I'm honestly curious if this game ever launched off the ground, and I'll be keeping an eye out for any updates. Anyway, let's move on. Duel of the Fates by Reddit user Cupacoolwada. This is a tale of how a paladin left our table, D&D 5e mechanics, and a homebrew world. Starring Dragonborn Paladin, Goliath Fighter, myself, a half-elf bard, Kenku Rogue, Minotaur Rogue, and Druid Halfling. The inception for the incident happened quite a long time before Paladin left the table. We were on the run, having stolen what amounted to the Declaration of Independence. Not intentionally, mind you. We were doing our best to be the good guys, but our Kenku snatched it up, not knowing what it was. We had, quite possibly, the hottest goods on our hands, and needed to offload it ASAP. Wanted for our treason, we cut through the mountains to our destination. Even so, we were beset upon by a mercenary troop, and beating them back to a retreat. We kept one behind to gather information, as news of our treason hadn't reached us yet. After discussing things with the hostage, who willingly told us everything without much prodding, we gave him some supplies and pointed him to a town to the south that we were fond of. Before he left, however, our paladin took it upon himself to disfigure this man with a breath attack, to teach him a lesson. After the burned man fled into the woods, I contacted my girlfriend, a powerful sorcerer. She lived in the town we pointed the man towards, and would be able to heal the man's injuries, should he arrive. We took issue with the actions taken by the paladin, but we didn't tear into it at the time. Our sessions were, and are, short. We wanted to move the main plot along, and this particular paladin spent a lot of time performing solo RPs with the DM, while we kicked rocks. Months passed in real life. We sold the Declaration. We built ourselves a keep, and within the game, over a full year had transpired. Given that we had now achieved governance of several hundred people, the actions of the paladin mattered a touch more than they had previously. I wanted to ask the player about it, but they refused to elaborate out of character. We have a specific Discord channel for speaking in character, to hash out small interactions, or jokes. This was also refused, as text can be misconstrued. Alright. I wanted to see what the motivation was for the action, if any. My own character wasn't a paragon, none of us were, but our paladin was a religious leader, and their oath revolved around protecting and spreading joy to others. It seemed like the player wanted to make a character that was more in line with a traditional paragon, but may have been struggling. The conversation went like this. So, Why did you melt that guy's face?"
"Oh, him? He was a bad guy. Needed to be taught a lesson."
"He was a POW. We disarmed him, and he was immobile."
"Well, I needed to be sure that he didn't do anything bad again."
"He wasn't even doing anything bad. We committed treason. Hunting us down was the morally correct thing to do."
"I'm a good person, so if he attacked me, he has to be bad."
This effectively went on for 30 minutes, of my character attempting to get his to perform the basic task of empathy. It didn't work. Eventually, I let it be, and just asked for him to roll the idea around his head and think about it. Rome wasn't built in a day, and people don't change quickly. Shortly after, we had a big fight, trying and failing to save a village. The BBEG revealed themselves, and we were only saved by a godly boon. So, having our shit thoroughly rocked, my character retreats to their room to spend time with his wife and child after that horrific event. He's interrupted by the Paladin, who accuses him of not caring about the lives of the villagers we tried and failed to save. As I had cast a spell trying to put a creature down, and failed to do so. This caused it to break free of a panic spell that the Paladin had dropped on it, and maul a villager. The Paladin failed to acknowledge that the same spell had caused the vast majority of our druid-summoned creatures to also go berserk, crippling us in the fight. The Paladin also refused to help out in slaying a Hydra in that same fight. They equated my bard's failed kill with disfiguring an unarmed POW. They then told me that the 30 minutes I spent trying to help them see an issue with their actions would be ignored, as would I, unless I fought them in a 1v1 in our combat arena. At this point, I blew up. The out-of-game frustration, combined with either the player or character's complete and utter lack of awareness, got to be too much for me. I outlined how making a tactical blunder was not remotely similar to harming an unarmed combatant, how their critique paled in comparison to their own failures in the same fight, and how goddamn stupid it was to put us both out of commission for a petty squabble in the middle of a demon invasion. My character then promptly went to bed, and the session ended. The subsequent session was spent with the entirety of the party, with the exception of my character having therapy time in the combat arena with our Paladin. They didn't take sides, which was for the best. They were only trying to get him to drop it, based on the evidence that my character simply wasn't going to show up. The therapy time took up the entirety of that session. After the session wrapped, the player of the Paladin informed the GM that they were going to be actively combative toward my character, to which the GM responded, "No." The Paladin then left our weekly session. I hope you had a swell time with the reading, as I had a terrible time throughout the events as they transpired. Well, Paladins certainly seem to be showing all the telltale signs of someone with that guy syndrome. Being a Paladin of peace that disfigures a POW is one thing entirely, but to then try to equate it to OP trying to save people but failing takes the cake. It just doesn't make sense. Thankfully, after Paladin said that he would be a dick to OP's character from then on, the DM said no. And like many of these stories, the trash took itself out in this case. Let's move on to the next one. Fragile Human thinks his handgun should bring down massive eldritch horror in 2 rounds. By Reddit user Zealous Zoroark. This was years ago, not particularly a long one. I was GMing a game of Cthulhu Tech for friends. If you've never heard of it, it's because it's a horribly flawed and unpopular system, but we love the setting and we love the game. This game is set in a war-torn cyberpunk future where Lovecraft monsters, cults, and magic exists, alongside mecha, starships, and cybernetics. And at this particular point in the campaign, the party was following leads on a cult hiding out in the nuclear wasteland that used to be the Amazon rainforest. On their way there, The helicopter they've taken to survey the area was shot down by rockets, and they crash land in the forest. At this point, we had been playing for months, but my good friend in the group told me he had a friend who was interested in joining, and I thought it'd be easy enough to introduce him, so I allowed him to join. The party survived the crash, alongside their newest member, who took the place of the nameless helicopter pilot provided to them by their guild. Banged up, dangerously low on supplies and ammunition, but alive. After the party salvages what they can from the wreck, the forest is eerily quiet, and an uneasiness fills the air. In the distance, colossal footsteps are heard cracking the earth, and a low, supernatural hum bellows. The party springs into action, activating defensive abilities and stealth, trying to gain a better vantage at the unearthly horror that approached all too quickly. The technical officer is the first unfortunate soul to lay eyes on the abomination. A 40-meter tall hulking mass of tumors, eyeballs, and overgrown roots hobbles through the forest, seeming to be drawn to the site of the crash. The technical officer nearly faints at the sight of it, and Whisper yells to the party what he sees. Immediately, the party does their very best to hide, remain silent, and avoid so much as looking at the monster. All but New Guy. New Guy takes cover, but does not use any of the provided opportunity to hide, despite the advice of the party and the clearly painted circumstance in front of him. As the monster draws near enough, New Guy makes no attempt to avoid its gaze, again, despite the direct advice from the entire party in unison, and very intentionally deterring language by the DM. By some miracle, he rolls nearly perfectly and does not suffer the effects of fear or insanity. To him, the light could not be any brighter shade of green, so he does what any sensible player would do. He draws his 9mm pistol, lets out a fierce battle cry, and fires into the beast's leg. Now, a side note. In this system, there are two damage scales, Vitality and Integrity. Vitality is the scale used between humans and small monsters. It's your standard damage. Integrity, on the other hand, is the scale used for colossal Lovecraftian horrors, mecha, and ships. 1 point of integrity health or damage is equal to 50 points of vitality health or damage. The strongest human character might have around 80 vitality points, so a single roll of a 2 on the game's many d10s would instantly kill virtually anyone. It's a horror setting, and the enemy was intended for the party to work up to salvaging a mecha to battle. But back to New Guy. Shots were fired, and the party was in disbelief at what just transpired. Out of game, asking him what the hell he was doing, and making extra sure he understood that this was not a game about winning every fight. He then explained the difference in the damage scales to our entire group in perfect detail, conveying that he knew exactly how the numbers would work in this situation, and reiterated that his actions were deliberate and informed. As the GM, I gave him one final attempt to salvage the situation by playing at the creature's low intelligence and pointing out a lovely hiding spot within diving distance to where he was. It's his turn again, and there was still ammo in his pistol. He fired 3 more shots, burning as many bonus dice as he had. The rest of the party dared not move or give away their location, still in hysterics at this guy out of game. The monster lifted one massive knotted foot into the air, temporarily occupied New Guy's hex, and when its foot came up again, there was no longer a New Guy in the hex. The player quit the group on the spot in a huff, never spoke to his friend who invited him into the group again, and talked the meanest shit about us and our game to anyone who would hear it.
What kind of a game is it if you can't even kill the enemies?
The part that dumbfounded me was how well he clearly understood the rules and the situation he was in, and still chose complete suicide. The party told him 100 times that he was committing suicide, and I gave him as many chances as I could without just plot armoring him. Could I have modified the encounter to save him? Yeah, probably, but everyone was enjoying a gritty, difficult campaign, and I wasn't going to throw that out for a friend of a friend. In retrospect, I know I could have just said, no, you don't do that. But I was young and very much a fan of the every action is available along with its consequences style of GMing. Moral of the story: be careful of letting people you don't know into games that you and your friends put a lot of time and effort into. I have to disagree with OP on one point. He shouldn't have to flat out tell a player no in that type of situation. It sounds like that player was given ample opportunity to make the right decision based on the description of what was happening, and with the other players making the smart decision. It's not your fault that new guy just wanted to shoot thing, win, and celebrate. If he wanted that, he could always just go play a video game. Thankfully, it sounds like the group didn't have to deal with this player for long, as this is yet another case of the trash taking itself out. Do you have a story that you would like to be read on the channel? If so, be sure to post it in the comments on the d&Ddoge subreddit, or even just at me on Twitter. As always, I appreciate all of you, and hope you never have a run-in with a player like the ones in these stories. Until next time.